Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I just want to soak this up. It is my honor and pleasure to speak with you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. My wonderful wife helps me to be organized, which I'm not by nature. And she kept saying, "Have you done your outline yet?" This is like yesterday. And have you thought about what you might want to talk about? And I just decided to just immerse myself as much as I could in everything I know and everything I've thought about forgiveness, just sort of see what comes out. Because, I don't know about you, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many people have had trouble with forgiveness in their life? Okay. Here's another one. How many people have had trouble forgiving themselves? I mean, it's really universal. It's an amazing thing. It's kind of what we're on the planet for, and it's not an easy thing. And part of the reason why it's not easy is because it's not really possible the way we have it set up. In other words, there's forgiveness on different types of levels. You know, part of what I do is I work with couples. And it's really important if you want intimacy as a couple to learn how to forgive. Actually, I define intimacy as a series of forgivenesses. It's not the fact that you just get along great and never fight and, you know, we ski down the hill, we've never bumped each other once. Good luck with that, if you ever do. It's better to know how to have somebody violate your boundaries and get over it than have them never do it, you know? But that's like a different type of forgiveness. That type of forgiveness, the best I can do when I work with people is, I was upset, I was mad at you, you did something, I didn't like it, I'm over it. Now I'm not upset anymore, so I guess I forgive you. You're not going to do it again, are you? You can really get to a place where I know I've forgiven someone when I don't imagine they would do it again. You know, you really know that you've gotten there when you're not projecting that in the same circumstance they'll probably do the same thing. Even if they would, it doesn't occur to you. And even, you know also that you forgave if you get into a situation and you're arguing about something else and it doesn't even occur to you to bring up that old thing. If it doesn't occur to you to bring it up, it's probably over. You got over it. But even so, that's not the kind of forgiveness that really makes a transformative difference in your life. It's wonderful, and I'm glad my wife and I have forgiven each other for everything, and we don't have much history, which is nice. You know, the history is forgiven. But it's not the same thing, and it's why you can still, even if you have a wonderful relationship with someone, you can still have trouble forgiving other people or other situations or yourself. And part of the reason is that you can't forgive what you think is real. Because in forgiving it, you're saying it really is real. Like, you did this horrible thing, but that's okay. It's like, ick. That's not okay. It'll never be okay if you really did this thing. That's not okay. So how are you going to say it's okay? And it's just this sort of self-congratulatory, but I forgive you. Because there's really another type of forgiveness, and it's what I was alluding to in the meditation. Real forgiveness, and a lot of this is from my reading of A Course in Miracles. But real forgiveness is saying, I forgive you for what you didn't do. Like, you didn't do anything. If they didn't do anything, then it's pretty easy to forgive them. If you really think they did it and you make it real and then you try to put icing over that dog do, it's not going to be edible, sorry. That's not going to work. So, real forgiveness has to do with a backing up process. You can't get there from there. You know, like, I saw this. Do you remember years ago they used to have bubble gum and it had like little cartoons in it? It was called Bazooka bubble gum or something. Anyway, they had these little cartoons, and one of them was this cartoon of this boy, and he was holding another boy down, and he had like his knees on the kid's shoulders, and he had his arm like this. He was going to wallop the kid. And his mother comes out the window and said, "Winthrop, didn't I tell you always to count to 10 before you know, whatever?" And he said, "Yeah, I remember that. I'm counting to 10. I just want to make sure he's still here when I'm finished." So, you know, I mean, that kind of forgiveness, you know, he's intent on maintaining the realness of you are bad and you're going to get it, and you deserve it, and therefore, I don't have to forgive you. I could punish you. What I mean by a backing up process is that you have to rethink it. If you don't rethink it, then it stays real, and then it really is hard to forgive. It'll never be okay with you to have something that you think is real be all right if it's not your experience that it's all right. Do you ever make your kids shake hands? It sucks. All right, now shake. Say you're sorry and say, "Sorry." We used to do that with our kids. Our kids would go, "Sorry." Like that. Like, not much authenticity there. So, what it requires to really forgive is to step back and rethink the situation and realize that this is all a dream. You made this up. And that you're making up your upset. And everybody in the dream you made up. You know how that is when you have a dream? Obviously you created it, but it sure does feel real, and you're reacting to it like it's so, and this thing, like the little kid was saying, you see? But what if it really is a dream? What if all of our bodies aren't real in the highest sense of the word? But we've been convinced that they are, and so then everything matters, everything's important. This is the function of the ego. You get born, and you're born into this feeling that you're separate. A great way to do that is to have a human body. Like, I am not you, and you are not me, and when you're very little, there's not much difference. The kid probably thinks it's its mother's body, doesn't see a distinction. But as you get older, and your ego forms, you really get that you are not this other person, and they are not you. And that's the trouble right there. That's why it's hard to forgive. Because you don't see the oneness. You don't see it. Intellectually, you might learn about it, but you don't really feel that oneness with the other person. And so, they are separate from you. And as such, they're a reminder that you're separate from your source, from where you came from. Let me just give you a quick history of what happens when you're in the womb, okay? People think it's 9 months, but it's not really. Have you ever noticed that time is moving very fast now? The older you get, the faster it goes. Anybody not experience that? Pew, pew, pew. Okay? Like summer's halfway over. What's with that? I don't remember that. You know what I mean? So, when you look back, now go back to when you were in first grade. Do you remember how long it took to get through first grade? It was really a long year. When is summer going to get here? It just took forever. Remember this? So time is slower the younger you are. Now imagine if you were 5. It's even slower. I remember when my sister went to school and I wanted to go to school, I could never get there. It was like I was too young, you know? And then when you're 4, time is slower. And when you're 3, it's even slower than that. And when you're 2 and when you're 1. And then when you're in the womb, it's an eternity. You don't spend 9 months in the womb. You spend an eternity in the womb. And in the womb, you're completely connected to love and to everything that's perfect. It's paradise in the womb. You have perfect pH, perfect temperature, perfect protection, perfect needs met. Not only are your needs met in the womb, you have perfect mobility. You can kind of slide around. You have perfect everything, and your needs are anticipated perfectly. If you need a little calcium, we'll suck it out of the mother's bones. Not to worry. She can take a pill. You get the calcium. Thank you. Didn't know I needed that. See what I mean? So you're spending an eternity in this paradise where everything is perfect and you're connected and you're one, okay? And then you get born into something that's quite imperfect. Sin is supposed to be, like you're born into kind of a hell because you experience separation. You're separate for the first time. You feel the separation. And it's uncomfortable, and all of a sudden your needs are not met perfectly. Pretty good, but not perfect. Have you noticed that? Sometimes you can't figure out what the baby wants and needs. It's crying, you're not getting it. And so it's very imperfect. And by the time you get to be about 2 years old, you feel you've been told no a lot. And you start to realize that this love that used to be just unconditional is quite conditional. By the time you're 2 or 3, you figure out, you know what? They love me when I'm good. They can crimp the hose when I'm not. But they love me when I'm good. And this is the formation of your ego. That's when the ego forms. Because you start to think that in that separation, it's your fault. This is the guilt that everyone feels, and that's what we're dealing with now. It's really from the beginning. It's the guilt of separation. Feeling like it's your fault that you're separate from God. Feeling like somehow I must have done something wrong because I don't feel it anymore, except when I do. But I got to figure out how to do this, and this is where the ego comes in to help. Unfortunately, it doesn't want to leave. It's like a government agency that you can't get rid of. And once you have the ego kind of helping you out, you feel the separation, and naturally you feel guilt. And the guilt is awful. Is there anybody here who likes guilt? I mean, it's awful. I don't like to feel guilty, and yet it's a natural byproduct of separation. If you feel separate, you will feel guilty. What happens when you call somebody and they don't call you back, and you keep leaving messages and they don't call you back? You can come up with a couple charitable explanations for a while, but after a while you start to think, are they mad at me? Are they blowing me off? Are they're not returning my, maybe it's me. See what I mean? This is a very natural thing. Separation is a natural thing that leads to guilt. As soon as you feel separate, you'll feel guilty. It's because of what happened when you were born. And consequently, the guilt is so horrible, you have to get rid of it. You can't abide it. It's too awful. And the way you get rid of it is you project it outward. Didn't call me back, huh? It's not me, it's you. What kind of rude thing is that? If you don't want to come, don't come. But you could call me back and told me that. See what I mean? And now I'm innocent again by virtue of your guilt. It was you. It wasn't me. I thought it was me, but it was you. You see? It doesn't work. You don't feel better after that. It seems like it would, but it doesn't. So consequently, we all have this universal guilt that we're projecting outward on other people, and that's where the hurt comes from. We're guilty that we're separate, or we believe we are. We really aren't, but we think we are. And we think, therefore, we're vulnerable, and they're separate from us, and they could hurt us. And we also think we could hurt them and get away with it, because it wouldn't be us, it would be them. Send them home, send them away. So it's a very, very profound existential thing of why forgiveness is difficult. It's because just using your senses, you really think you're seeing stuff out there. Do you know we're not seeing anything? It's not even physically possible to perceive anything outside ourselves. Think about it for a minute. I know we all think we see stuff. We're not seeing nothing. We're making stuff up. Because the nervous system doesn't even have the ability to perceive anything. It can only have little firings of neurons that go dit-dot, It either fires or it doesn't fire. You know that, right? There's no real vision in there. There's no nothing. It's just nerves going bip, 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 and we're making sense of it. And so we're interpreting these little firings. Imagine you were sitting, your whole life you were sitting here, and somebody put a metal trash can over your head, okay? And it went to all the way from there to the ground, okay? And you lived in there. And that was your metal trash can, okay? And every morning you heard this. And then 24 hours later, you know what I mean? It would take 12 hours to go, okay? If you heard that enough, what would you think when you heard it? Here comes the sun. See what I mean? You'd think it was the sun because the nerves were interpreting. They're just firing. You don't have the ability to hear anything but dit, 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 dit. You don't know if it's the sun out there. You see what I mean? Your body can't know it. It doesn't even have the ability to know it because all it can do is interpret these little firings. You're not seeing nothing. Does that make sense? So we're all interpreting what our nervous system is getting impinged with, but we're making it up. We don't know if it's really out there. You don't really know if it's out there because your nervous system isn't equipped to know that. So we are projecting outward everything, and we're projecting our own guilt outward as well. And that's why we are distracted. It turns out that the only way to forgive is to get that there's nothing to forgive because nobody did anything. No harm, no foul. That was the point of the crucifixion and the resurrection. An enlightened soul cannot feel pain. It cannot be sacrificed. That was the lesson. It wasn't that he died. It was that he didn't die. And so if he didn't die, then he went back to his disciples, supposedly, and said, look, if I'm not dead, then are you really a murderer? That's how they got forgiven. That's how everybody got forgiven. There's nothing to forgive. That was the point. There was nothing to forgive because you didn't do anything. And whatever you did do with his body, trust me, it was out of total unconsciousness. You didn't know even what you were doing. That's what he said just before he left his body. They don't know what they're doing. But it's not like you're forgiving somebody for what they knew they did. It's that there's nothing to forgive because it's all kind of a dream. So you feel like, oh, come on, we all have bodies, we got to deal with this, and some consequences happen, and you can take your thoughts and make some things up, and I've done it, and bad things happen. There are consequences to thinking. I'm with you. I have one too, and I worry about it. But when I say back up, I mean you have to back into seeing exactly what the ego is doing and look at it a different way from the point of view of this spirit inside of you that does have a seeing, that can see beyond the trash can. And that spirit only sees love and only sees connection. When you think about what makes you upset, it's basically just your interpretation of events, isn't it? You can't be upset without some interpretation. My mother used to say this thing. She would say, I'd hear her telling her friends, I don't know why. My mother, first of all, is the queen of guilt. In the Jewish religion, we call that the gift that keeps on giving. Anyway, she used to say, I don't know why. All my kids left me. And I was like, good God. She would tell us this. She had this story about how her kids just abandoned her. She doesn't know why. They all moved away. My brother and sister and I said, Mom, I live in Tacoma Park, Nancy lives in Columbia, and Marty lives in Alexandria. We're all less than an hour away from you. What are you talking about? You know, like, oh, my kid. See what I mean? So what is there to forgive? You see what I mean? It's like, I said to her, your best friend Netzi had a son who studied Burmese languages, and he lives in Burma, for God's sakes. Other people moved to California. You see what I mean? It's just the way you see it. So there's nothing to forgive there because there's nothing that really happened. You could say, well, forgive me for abandoning you, but we didn't abandon her. You get it? It's this incredible thing that's available to us now, though, that you don't have to see everything from just the ego. Because if you do, the ego will completely distract you from the real problem and the only real solution. The real problem is that you still feel separate since you jumped out of the womb, and the only solution is you're not. You're completely connected. And if you come from that place, and if you really believe that, your entire world will change. Your life will be different. It'll look different. Things will be different. Once you feel this guilt, you project it onto everything. I project guilt, and we all do, onto inanimate objects. The other night, I was telling Lauren that this mosquito was out to get me. I mean, people believe their computer's out to get them. Lauren will say, I can't get this thing to work. And as soon as I come, she says, you know, as soon as you come up here, it's going to not do it, right? So she says, I said, well, hit that button. Oh, now it's not doing it. I knew it. So look, we're projecting it onto everyone. It's doing it to me. I was sure that this little mosquito who bit me out in the garage had followed me inside to taunt me. You got to be kidding. I got that sucker, and my own blood was there. I felt like, the nerve. You came back for a second bite, you greedy little... It's like, what's with that? The mosquito didn't do anything but be a mosquito. Do you get it? It's just what it does. But boy, was I projecting a lot onto that. Motives. Who do you think you are? Bad enough you bit me out there. You're going to follow me in and taunt me? Anyway. The miracle is your ability to see things differently. When I work with couples, I tell them, I guess I'm just already understanding that you can't get rid of your ego that easy, but I say one of the worst things you can say to a person when they're upset is, do you know what it is? I think you're making a big deal out of nothing. My wife does that to me, and I immediately grab the dynamite. I'm going to blow up the train. Nothing? You think it's nothing? I'll show you nothing. But actually, it's because we don't like that, because the ego especially doesn't like that, and that's what gets upset. It's because it's true. All of us are making a big deal out of nothing. Something that didn't happen. Something that didn't really transpire. When you come from this other place, when you allow the Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, and the Holy Spirit is just like a little liaison between formless, endless, everything God and us, so we can relate to it. I mean, whatever, it can come in many forms. It could be an angel, it could be a little voice in your head, it could be something, but you know what it is when you get it. It's the universe winking at you. It's this notion that somebody's translating this high self to you and a different way of seeing the world, in which case you no longer need to be upset. And there's nothing to forgive and no one to forgive, because you're okay and you're connected and you're all one. And your unconscious mind knows this. And here's the problem with demanding an apology and feeling like you're bad and feeling like somebody else did it to you and you're going to hold it against them and you're not. You're going to make bigger case. The ego can do this, and you can really stir up a lot of dust. The problem is that the unconscious mind that you have already knows that you're one with everything. So if you attack somebody, you are reinforcing that you are guilty. If you're everyone and you attack them, you're attacking yourself. And that's why you can't unclench. That's why it hurts so bad. You're actually attacking yourself. And then when you're loving someone, you're loving yourself. So here's the deal. The way you forgive people, the way you forgive yourself, if you're having trouble with it, is to forgive others. It's in their forgiveness that you are forgiven. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Just as soon as you take your grip off their neck, you can breathe better. Okay? It's related. That's your neck you're squeezing. Get it? So, I'm not saying this is easy. It's actually, it's the work. The real work is, can I see what the ego is doing? Basically distracting me from the big problem, which is I'm afraid I'm separate from God, and I can't stand that guilt. So I got to project it on everybody I see. But can I back up a little bit and take that perspective that sees that there's no problem? When you're not projecting your guilt and you're just in that experience of love, then when your computer breaks, it's just a broken computer. You just fix it. Haven't you ever had that happen? Sometimes you drop something and it's like, why am I always dropping? Other times it's just, oh, you just pick it up. That place of your unity and your oneness with everything and everyone is your Savior. That is what saves you. And this person in front of you, they're your Savior too, because they are the sonship. And if you can actually see them as they really are, you will be forgiven in that same instant. It's really an amazing thing. I've written a song today. First of all, I am so happy to do this. I just appreciate you all so much for this opportunity. Just because I knew I was going to do it, then I got to write a song. Anyway, the song, it's a little bit sad, but the song is about what do you do when somebody won't forgive you? Has anybody had that experience that somebody just will not even give you a chance? They've written you off, but they're not going to process it with you either. And they're convinced that you are the reason why they're unhappy, so they're not going to be with you, or whatever. And you kind of get that we could work this thing out. That's why I have that song, We Can Work It Out, you know, the Beatles. Like, we could work this out, couldn't we? But sometimes people won't let you do that. They're not going to give you that chance. They're really kind of merged with their ego, and I am innocent by virtue of your guilt, and that's how we're going to leave it. And I've had a couple of people like that in my life. It's very hard, because I said, couldn't we just... And they won't. And you know what? They don't have to. That's the good news. They don't have to. And you can forgive them for not forgiving you. And that's what this song is about. It's called Best Friends Forever. This might be a good one to close your eyes for. Once when we were young, songs as yet unsung, we became connected by the things we just begun. Friends for every age, dancing on our stage. Life was full of promise as we kept our hearts engaged. Best friends forever, that was our song. Best friends forever, strong. Just the two of us, riding on the bus. I could tell you anything. We had that kind of trust. And who would ever guess we'd become much less? One day I would think of you and just feel emptiness. Best friends forever. Something went wrong. Best friends forever gone. Hurt when unexpressed, can lead to deep unrest. Distance hides the feelings, and relationships regress. When we don't discuss what's come between us, that which was authentic soon becomes as dry as dust. I've wondered what's underneath all the pain. The truth is just waiting to come out again. If you'd be so kind as to change your mind, we could be together and just leave the past behind. But even if you don't, if you can't or won't, I will see us as we are, together for all time. Best friends forever, there's nothing wrong. Best friends forever, strong. Confusion, illusions are gone somehow. Forgiving is living each moment now. Best friends forever, as love goes on. Best friends forever, strong. Thank you.